class.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this winter wonderland of polymer clay jewelry. We are making earrings. We are going to make a necklace. We are going to use polymer clay. We are going to use UV resin. We're going to use copious amounts of glitter. This is a fun class. My name is Stephanie Manor. I'm here representing Blue Moon Studio and Michaels. And let's get started. Let's take a look at some of the projects that we're going to make today as we switch to our top-down camera. So everything that we're making today is all of the components are available on michaels.com and in store Michaels. So like I said, we have some polymer clay. That's what these little mittens are made of. They have some texture to them. We're going to get some paint down in that texture to really let that show. And we've added a cute little bow on there for those mitten earrings. And then we have a cute little wintry scene. And this is made of polymer clay, but then we use UV resin on top to get that shiny top coat. This is a little real dried flower branch. And this is a little snowman with a scarf. Okay, I just realized that I don't have my dried flowers here, but if you'll give me just a sec, I'm gonna go grab them when the time comes. Okay, so we're gonna get started with the polymer clay part of this. And actually, we'll get started with this polymer clay part because this is the simplest one to make. Essentially, we're just making a disc of a single solid color, okay? So polymer clay is an oven-baked clay. And so everything that we're making today is gonna eventually go into our oven. And that is gonna cook for 20 minutes, 250 degrees. I'm going to bring my first supply in here. This is a ceramic tile that you buy like at the hardware store. And this is a perfect surface to work on and also to bake on. I just put this directly into my oven. I don't need to transfer what I'm doing to a baking sheet. It just stays on here and it cooks very well on here. This is the clay that we'll be using from Bead Landing. All of this clay is found in the jewelry making department. And here are some clay tools that we are going to be using as well. So a bunch of different tools, a roller, and a very, very sharp blade is in here. I'll show you how to use that. So if we have anyone crafting along with us today, thank you, welcome. Go ahead and say hi in the comments. I'd love to know who's crafting along. If you are not crafting along with us today, just know that for every class that we post, we do publish a supply list. And that supply list has all of the different materials that you'll need to craft along. So I'm just sort of bringing these out one by one, including clay. So this is polymer clay. And I showed you this version of polymer clay. This, you'll notice, has a design in it. So that's one type of polymer clay. This is the type you probably are more familiar with, and that is just your standard solid clay. So for these, we are going to use some solid clay. And we are going to use this blue color. So you want to have a sky color. And just so you know, polymer clay is like paint. You can mix them together to get a custom color. Okay, so I have this kind of sky color. These are scraps from one of my little experiments that I did. I'm going to mix these two together. And the process that you see me doing here is called conditioning. Conditioning is really important for polymer clay because it makes it workable and malleable, and it helps you to be able to cut it a little bit easier. So a question in the comments, what paint? I just said that as an analogy that polymer clay is like paint because it can be mixed together to create any custom color. That's kind of what I'm doing here is I'm mixing a lighter blue that had a little bit of white in it with this slightly darker sky blue, and just mixing that up until it is combined into one color. And kind of rolling it into a rough ball, but just mushing that down onto my work surface, because the next thing I'm going to do is roll it out. Before I do that though, I have a little dish of cornstarch. So you'll see me dip into the cornstarch every so often, and that is so our tools and cutters and things do not stick. Just like you would use flour. And I'm bringing in one of my tools here. This is a hollow acrylic ruler, not ruler, roller. And I can roll my clay out like this. And when I roll, you'll see that I'm turning. That's so that I can avoid this type of a thing happening. So I'm rolling it one way and then turning it and rolling it the other way. Now, if you need some help getting that to one even thickness, I'm going to show you another tool in my toolbox here. And that is these things, which if I place on either side of my clay, I can roll out, and that makes sure that I'm rolling to one even thickness. These happen to be 3 millimeters. You can kind of see it here at the end. It's a little hard to see, but this is 3 millimeters. You'll also notice that clay is going to get in your hands. I always keep a damp little, this is a microfiber cloth over on the side here, just to wipe my hands off. And this is going to become really important in the next piece that we make, because it is white clay. White clay is just going to pick up every tiny little piece of dust and things that you didn't even know were in your room is going to get in that white clay. So make sure you're working with clean hands, clean surface. Let me just fix the camera a little bit here. Okay, so we are going to use a circle cutter. This one, this is that's about a $1/2 size. The cutters all come in multi-packs like this, so you can see you get lots of different jewelry shaped cutters. I am also going to dip this cutter into my cornstarch and then press it straight down. And really making sure that it has made contact with the surface here. Because it's a circle, I can twist this. You can't do that with every shape. That would not work with a triangle. And then lift it straight up. And then we can just remove what we don't want. So let's go back to our example here. So in our example, there are things that we do before it goes in the oven, and there are things that we do after it goes into the oven. So the only other thing besides the blue background that we're going to do before it goes into the oven is we are going to add the little snowman body, not the whole snowman, because there are parts of him that we're going to add later. And we can also add some little snow in the background. All right, so for that, you want to get some white clay. And again, I'm wiping my hands with a microfiber cloth, because if you've used a dark color clay and you go straight into using a white clay, you are going to get muddy clay. So I'm just taking a tiny little piece of white, and I actually just need a tinier piece than that. And we want to create a little ball of clay. And you want it to be smaller than you think it should be. So I'm creating like the body of the snowman. And now I need another little piece for his head. And just kind of trying to make them spheres. I'm actually going to make the head just a little bit smaller. I'm going to pinch off a little bit of clay. And roll that again. And you want him to be smaller than you think because we're going to place him on our disc and then we're going to smush him down. So that is going to make it a little bit wider. And I can see, probably you can too, in my clay, like I said, that white clay picks up everything. I've got like a little fuzz probably. So let's find a better side of that that does not include a fuzz front and center. And I brought out another tool. This is in that tool. Thank you, Patty. Patty said in the comment that's called character. I totally believe in that because we're making handmade things. It's like leaving your fingerprints on it. Okay, so that's about where I'm going to put the snowman. And now we want to press down. You want to find a flat object. I'm just going to use that thickness guide and just going to try to keep it straight and press straight down. So that way he still has some character, like he still has some volume and 3D-ness, but he's not fully incorporated into that background. At the same time, you can make some larger snowflakes for the sky if you want. And that's just done with more clay. You can get these into really small pieces. I just cut that piece in half. And this is a lot of detail work. The great thing about clay is you can take your time. You're not racing against the clock, thinking something's gonna dry up on you. You can really take your time and add all of these details. So this is how you would add any larger snowflakes into the sky. We're going to be adding glitter in the next step though, so let's put that right there. And just gently pressing down on these, okay? And you can add as many of those as you want. Okay, so this is going to go into the oven. As I said, 250 degrees, 20 minutes is pretty much the sweet spot for anything that you are going to make, anything that's flat. So these pieces that we're making, you can see how flat they are. Even this pendant is a little bit thicker, but not by much. A flat thing like that only needs about 20 minutes in a 250-degree oven. If anything, you can err on the side of cooking it a little bit longer. It's not going to burn. It's only at 250 degrees. So if you leave it in there for 30 minutes, you're fine. But you do want to, if you're going to err on the side of cooking it longer. Cooking it less means that your clay might be brittle, like it hasn't like fully cooked in there, so it'll get brittle. So like I said, for any thin thing, about 20 minutes. If you are sculpting some fabulous 3D thing, like let's picture like a charm or something where it's a 3D charm, like a penguin or something, and it is kind of chunky or wide, you'll want to cook that for longer, maybe 30, 35 minutes even. But for jewelry thickness, let's say, thin, it's about 20 minutes. Okay, so that can go into the oven, to the imaginary oven, because I've already made one. Oh, I forgot one thing. I forgot he needs a carrot nose. Let's add that. We need the tiniest little bit of an orange color. Mine's a little bit more of a kind of a mustardy, kind of like that. You can see you can make like, that's about the size of a piece of rice. And you can go in with an X-Acto knife and cut that in half. And very carefully. Oh, that's still too big. Can cut that even smaller. I'm just kind of placing that in the right place and then hitting it with my X-Acto knife just to, I don't know, give it like carrot texture, but at the same time, that's helping me push it down into his face. Okay. More tiny details to come, Darlene. So many details. This is going to be awesome. All right. So we have some that we cooked earlier. And there it is, warts and all. You can see, around where my cutter was, I didn't even bother to clean that up before I put it into the oven because I can clean that up after. I have random bits of clay stuck to this, but it is just fine. This is the one similar to what we just made. I also made another disc over here with some kind of white swirls, and I thought that looks like a cool wintry sky. And that's when I was mixing my white and my blue together. I just kind of stopped halfway through mixing. I'm like, wait a minute, those look like the wind's blowing. So ultimately up to you and your design. You can go plain or you can go something like this, but you can see it removes from this very easily. And this is what you have when you take it out of the oven. You might have some like dangly bits on there. Let's take a look at the back. The back will be shiny. See how shiny that is? That's because we're cooking it on a shiny thing. It will assume the texture of what you're cooking it on. So what I can do to make this a little bit cleaner is I can get an emery board or some sandpaper. Or if I'm really fancy, I can get an electric buffer type drill. And I can just kind of knock off the edge there where there might have been some hangers on little pieces, some roughness. And again, this is not perfect. This is a handmade creation. Excuse me. And I'm just feeling it around the edges. If I feel anything that feels like it needs to be sanded off, it's just barely any pressure just to knock those things off. Okay. All right, let's get rid of this. And this blue thing that you're looking at down here is a silicone mat. And that's going to be important in these next steps that we're going to take because we are switching now to UV resin. So UV resin comes in a bottle like this, sold in the jewelry making department at Michael's. We teach classes on UV resin. If you want to learn more about this amazing and versatile material, we do classes. We have the cutest class coming up for New Year's Eve. Everyone run to michaels.com's classes and events page. And we are making the cutest little champagne bottles and flutes out of UV resin. So definitely check that out. But what we're using the resin for today is more like kind of a coating, a top coat. We're going to give this some glossiness and allow us to add some fun stuff to the front. So what is that fun stuff? We're going to add a little metal star. We are going to make a scarf for this guy out of this type of floss. We are going to add glitter. So I have some like translucent glitter here. And we're going to add snow underneath it. And that'll come with the glitter. And we're going to add a dried flower. And I just realized I don't have a dried flower at my craft desk. So I've never done this before, but I'm actually going to get up and go grab the dried flowers, which are just beyond my reach. So entertain yourselves for 1 second. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. Forgot the tree. All right, these are the dried flower packages that are sold at Michael's. They usually contain flowers and a little bit of greenery. This is the greenery. And these are extremely delicate. I have a few stacked on top of each other. So this is what we're looking for. And I think I'm actually going to look through the ones that I have to find a perfect Christmas tree shape. These are all natural materials, so it's going to differ. I think this one. And they're so brittle, you can see how easy I can just break that off of there. That's going to look something like that. I'm just kind of testing to see how I want that to fit and see if I need to trim it. Woo. Okay, so we're going to put him here. All right, so let's decorate our snowman. We're going to give him some eyes, and for that, you can just use a Sharpie. You have one of the really, really fine point Sharpies that will probably help you. But let's see how. So now remember, this clay is cooked. I would not want to do this on unbaked clay. A little dot of some acrylic paint would be super easy there too. And just 2 buttons. We're going to be coating this whole thing in UV resin. In fact, let's bring you in just a little bit so you can see what I'm looking at here. All right, scarf. So this is just some embroidery floss. We're going to cut 2 tiny little pieces. One that goes horizontally across his neck, and one that goes here. And I'm just completely eyeballing the size. But just to give you a reference, this is about, oh gosh, that's about 1/4 of an inch. It's going to go right there. And this little piece is going to go, let me put this in my left hand. Going to go right here, and he's going to have to be a little bit shorter. Okay. All right, so let's get our UV resin out. We're also going to use a silicone mixing bowl because I want to mix, I want the whole thing to have like kind of a glittery top coat. And so I can mix that in to begin with.
Stephanie, Patty has a question. She's wondering if dotting the I's using ink would affect the baking of an item perhaps before you baked it.
That's a good question. I've never put ink in the oven, but I think it'd be okay. It's just 250 degrees. So if you wanted to dot it before it goes into the oven, I think you'll be okay. But don't quote me on that. I've never actually tried that particular material. I've put a lot of materials in the oven. I don't know if I've ever done ink. All right, so here I have some snowy looking glitter. I'm going to mix that in. We can always add more glitter later, but here I just want kind of a light dusting. All right, so I'm going to use this glittery to connect everything together. So keeping that on my wood stick, I'm going to kind of try to place these. And this is where you need to have a lot of patience because these things are so small. I can also take the little scarf and dip it into there. Whew. I'm like holding my breath over here, guys. You have no idea how small this is. Okay. All right, looking good. And I'm also going to add a star. These are little metal stars, also available at Michael's in the jewelry making department. And I'm just going to get that turned the right way and then use a little resin to pick that up. And put that in the sky. Okay. And I just want to make sure that there's no big glob around the star. So I'm kind of trying to like feather out the edges a little bit. Let's move the star over. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. And then I'm just going to tack down with just a tiny little bit of resin because what I'm going to do is do this in a couple steps. So this like pre-curing step, what I'm doing now is all these elements that I've placed, I want to make sure that I don't mess them up. So I want to cure those down. And for that, you need to bring in a UV light. So this is a UV light. It plugs into a USB cord drive thing. Anywhere where you charge your phone, you'll be able to plug this in. And when I hit that button, you can see that the light comes on and it is curing. It's curing all of those things that we just put in place. I'm trying to like put this to the side so you can at least see. This is one type of UV light. There's another type of UV light that's more like the flashlight style. I can turn that on, just whichever one you like. But this goes for 1 minute and is going to shut off automatically. And we actually don't need this to be on for more than a minute. I'm just tacking down what I've done, and UV resin grabs almost immediately. Okay, so that's been about a minute. And all of those areas that were resin are now hardened. Okay, now we're going to go over the whole thing, but not before. I want to create like a snowbank here. And for that, I'm going to take another silicone cup and I'm going to put actually a little bit of probably poured a little too much in there, just a little bit of resin. And this one we are going to load up with glitter. I want to create almost like a paste. Kind of like this, where I can like sculpt with it. So we're just getting it down. You know what else would be great for this is white sand, like truly white, or even cotton from a cotton ball. Can mix that in with the resin and create this little snowbank. Okay, looking good. I'll always keep a paper towel off to the side so I can wipe off this wood stick. And now I'm going to cure it again. So a great thing about UV resin is you can't really over cure it. And it helps sometimes when you're working on projects to be able to do it in layers. Yeah, do you see that too? It's like totally glowing. Like his nose is neon right now. It's very cool. All right, so I'm gonna let that go. The last thing we have to do, we have a couple things to do. Let's move this to the side and show you. So we have to cover the whole thing with our shiny layer. Then we have to drill a hole in the top and string it onto, this one's on a necklace. You could also make these into earrings, but you can create your own necklace using necklace chain, or you can use one of the many pre-made necklaces that Michael sells. All right, that went for a minute. This, because it is so thick, is probably not fully cured, but that's okay. We're going to put the top coat on and then run that through a few more times. So I just use same wood stick and I'm going to cover the whole thing. If you have an old paintbrush, that can work too. In fact, I might just, instead of dropping it one by one, I'm going to cover the whole thing. And we want to make sure that our tree is covered because he's very delicate. And we want this to be a long wearing piece of jewelry that we can wear every winter. So I'm just kind of bringing it to the edges.
Stephanie, what type of oven do you use?
I just use my regular kitchen oven, so a conventional oven, but a toaster oven works. A microwave oven does not. Please be warned. Do not put polymer clay in the microwave. But yeah, a toaster oven or a conventional oven. And I want to make sure I get the tip of this tree. And smoothing everything out. I think we're ready to put that under. So this is giving like snow globe vibes. I love it so much. It looks like we're looking at a little seed inside of a snow globe. So I'm gonna let this cure off to the side while we move on to the next, because there were so many little details in that one that I want to make sure we get to another earring project here, which is our mitten. So let's switch back out of UV resin mode back into polymer clay mode, and we're going to make these mittens. So for that, you need some white polymer clay, which means you need to make sure that your work surface and your hands are very clean. Let me zoom you back out. Woo! Jumping around there on you. Okay. All right, so I have my white polymer clay over here. About that much. This is going to make a single earring. Actually, we'll do all of it so we can make two. So I have about this much. What is that? The size of half of a golf ball? I'm not sure. But kind of pressing that down. And just as I look at this, I can see all of the little things that I've gotten into this white clay. This is brand new out of package about 2 hours ago. But I'm putting some cornstarch on it and rolling that out. So you want to roll this fairly thin. I would say about, anywhere from 2 to 3 millimeters thin. A little more cornstarch. Okay. Now, we do not sell a mitten shaped cutter. So we're going to be doing a little bit of kind of hand cutting. We're going to start with a shape. And this teardrop is a perfect shape because we're going to get a nice curved surface up at the top. And for right now, I'm just going to make a very light thing right there so I can see where my shape is. And if I was making two, I would put another one over here to see where my shape is. And the reason for that is we want to add some texture. So the thing that gives this so much charm is that it has that sweater texture, and that comes through a product like this called a texture sheet. So this is a flexible sheet that, here's that sweater texture that looks really terrible on camera, and the other side has a different kind of a herringbone sweater texture. And so the way the texture sheets work is you want to make sure you have a lot of cornstarch because these can be difficult to remove, or the clay can get stuck in there. I got a little bit of clay stuck in mine too, and I've tried to get that out, but once it's stuck in there, it is difficult. So you lay the texture sheet down, and then you look for your roller. Ah, here it is. Okay, and you want to roll that. And it helps if you hold the texture sheet down with one hand and roll with your other hand, because you don't want that texture sheet to move and give you like a double imprint. And it's helpful if you stand up and you could really like pressure on there. Okay, let's see what we got. Oh, so cute. It is so cute. Lots of different texture sheets available. Each one is double-sided. They come in a 2-pack, so you're getting like a lot of textures to work with. And now we're going to cut it for real. I just did that first to make sure where I was going to cut and to make sure that both of these could fit. So actually, we're going to flip our teardrop around to this side, dip it in cornstarch. And I'm gonna, you can see right down through there where you're gonna cut. I'm gonna kind of offset that center braid, I guess you could call it, because we are gonna do some hand cutting. And that's where I want it to be. I'm just gonna make one earring today, but the other earring you could kind of do in this orientation. And we can just remove that. Of course, you would have 2 on there. And now's when we need an X-Acto knife or a sharp blade. And it's actually simpler than you think to turn this teardrop into a mitten shape. Really what we need to do is cut out where the thumb is. So we're going to leave the right side where it is and going to just cut right into our clay. A little thumb shape. And let's remove this. I have a lot of cornstarch on here. And now we just want to kind of clean up and perfect. So make sure when you're using an X-Acto, you want to be fully perpendicular to whatever surface you're cutting on. And I'm just kind of removing little areas. And then down here, we're going to cut straight across. Get rid of that. And then if this is looking too, I don't know, oven mitty for you, you can kind of narrow that side as well. And just like that, you have a cute little mitten. Now it does need a little cuff, which we'll make separately. Cables for cable knitting. Thank you, Patty. Sometimes I search for the right word and whew, it does not come to me. So now I'm just taking some more white clay and I'm making a snake out of it. And I'm going to grab my little tool here. This is a great multi-purpose tool that I've used several times for both its intended purpose and its extra purposes. But if you are making any type of like a little snake and you need to make it perfect, you can just roll a flat object and that just smooths it out and doesn't have your fingertip texture on there. Okay, so I'm actually pulling this a little bit to make it a little thinner. And then I'm going to press down with this and see. Yes, it did stick. I think maybe the better tool would be the ruler, because I want to flatten this out. There we go. And that's going to be our little cuff. And then coming in with the blade, just to cut away the excess. And now we want to make sure that that is stuck down on there. So with the blade, I'm just kind of pressing it in. And when this bakes, they will kind of like meld together as one. Okay, and that's the cuff. So we bake it 250 degrees, 20 minutes. To the ones that I made earlier. So here are the ones that I made earlier. I used the herringbone side of that texture. I just wanted to see how that looks. That looks kind of cool. And then here's the cable knit. And again, emery board, kind of clean up any areas that don't look exactly smooth. Okay, and now to really emphasize where that texture is, we're going to use a tiny little bit of acrylic paint. Any color that you want, but I'm using blue. Okay, just a tiny bit, but you want to make sure you get it down into those cracks, because we are going to wipe off what we don't need. And with paper towel, I'm just going to wipe that off. I'm going to go in with a slightly damp because I want to remove even more. So you can see that just is kind of revealing itself. And you can just keep wiping that off to get that as white as you want on the top. But what a difference adding that little bit of paint makes. Okay, so let's turn this into an earring. We are going to need to drill a hole in it. And I have a little hand drill here. Actually, I have two different hand drills. They have two different bit sizes. This is a 3mm bit. This is a 1.5mm bit. I find that for jewelry, usually 1.5mm is the way to go. That's just about the perfect size to accept a jump ring, which is what we need to put up here. So I'm going to place this where I want that to go, and just with even pressure. And it just takes a second and it comes through there. And then finally, we want to add a bow. And I'm going to show you the coolest technique that I just learned to make this bow. So first I'm going to make a bow on this side. So the easiest way to do this is, this is 1/4" satin ribbon. And the way to make a small bow is you want to gather two bunny ears like that. Cross the bunny ears and bring one through. And of course, you know how to do that. You usually end up with something funky like that, and then you have to play around with it to get it just perfect. Well, I'm going to show you how to get that playing around super easy. So see these long ears? We don't want those. We want them to be super tiny. So we're going to make them smaller, pull it again, make them smaller, pull it again. Now, what I just learned is to do that process that I just showed you, and then take a Q-tip and cut it in half. Okay, and then once you get your ribbon pretty small, you can put that Q-tip in each side. And this really helps you get it to this really tiny size. So I can pull, and I can get this bow really tiny very easily. So I'm pulling apart to tighten the middle ribbon, and then pulling on these to tighten that bow, the bow loops, I guess. And that's how you can make a really tiny little bow. So let's pull these out and give it a little trim. And I'm cutting my ends just pretty much straight across. You can do a fancy cut if you want. And that's how you make a tiny little bow for a tiny little mitten. And we are going to use some super glue. To glue that on. And my super glue is dried out. Okay, so let's pretend that that's glued on there. Now, to turn into an earring, you need two more pieces. You need, not that, you need an earring wire of your choice. This is a classic French ear wire. And one jump ring. Jump ring is about 6 mm, I think. And some little tools. Just plain flat nose jewelry pliers. I'm going to take that jump ring, open it up, and go through. And before you close it up, add your ear wire. You might need to bring in another tool at this point to close that. And there you have an earring with a bow that I will super glue on whenever we get off of here. Okay, cool. We are wrapping it up here. If you have any burning questions, now is the time to ask them. I hopefully will be able to see what you ask and be able to answer you live on air. But let's switch back to this piece that we made earlier. He's looking pretty cute. And it's a nice hard finish. And we need to create a hole in the top of this as well with our hand drill. And this will cut right through the polymer clay. And the resin. Now, if you have a little electric drill, good for you. That will make this even faster, but you can see it's not a hard process. And just kind of clean that up there. I always like to poke at it with this thing just to make sure I got all of the dust out of there. Okay. All right, let's get another jump ring. You are going to need a larger jump ring for this. This is quite thick. So this is probably, I think, an 8 millimeter or 7 millimeter jump ring that I'm using. And tools. Open that up. And I'm just going to go ahead and close this. All right. And you can use a pre-made necklace, or you can sort of build your own out of chain. See here, I have some bulk chain. So depending on where you want your necklace to hit, you want to cut this anywhere from 18 inches to 28 inches if you want it to be very long. I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. And I'm going to string this through. And let's show you how to finish the ends there. So you can create a necklace of custom length. If you like to not have it have a clasp, probably need it about at least 26 to 28 inches so it can fit over your head. But if you want to use a clasp, you can use a clasp of your choosing. I'm just using a little baby lobster clasp. And a jump ring. Actually, you're going to want 2 jump rings. I like one big, one small. The one jump ring is going to be the loop that you hook onto. Let's put that on this side. Just by hooking that onto the very last chain link and closing. And then this is the jump ring that's going to hold our clasp on the other side. Ooh, this is a very small little lobster clasp, but it works. Okay, and then we've just created a custom necklace chain for our custom snowman pendant. He would look really good with a bow at the top too, actually. Bow, come here, come back. That'd be cute to put a little bow like that. I have a bow from our last class. Oh, that is so cute. I would just put this bow with a jump ring onto the chain. See, inspiration is everywhere, guys. That's why I love doing these classes. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you learned a lot. Okay, question from Patty. Thank you. So how do you get that extra paint off of your clay? I use a damp rag. If that's not doing it for you, you can use a little bit of acetone would help to get that off. But I found that I got it pretty well off with just a damp rag and kind of scrubbing it a little bit. So thank you guys for joining. Please do check out our future classes on polymer clay and on UV resin. We love to teach these classes and we love to see you guys. Hello to every regular that has come to my classes before. We appreciate you. Thanks for sticking to the end. My name's Stephanie Menor with Blue Moon Studio. We'll see you next time. Thanks a lot, guys.